Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for attending ONEgeneration's Health and Wellness Webinar Week. We are so excited and just grateful for you guys taking your time to join us today and some of these amazing topics that we've been going over this all day today. But we have another amazing presenter today. My name is Niambi Cooper. I am the director for ONEgeneration Senior Enrichment Center, led by the organization's president and CEO, Jenna Haas. Today, the layout of the presentation would be, we would have our presenter talk for the first roughly 45 minutes of the presentation. And then at the end, we would have like a 15-minute space where you can feel free to use the Q&A chat box. Actually, I think Monica will be using it throughout the presentation. So we would love for you to interact and just feel free to jump in and ask her questions. And we'll also be using the chat function as well. And also, if you have any questions that you would like to ask and you don't necessarily want to use the chat function, you can simply raise your hand, and that you do that at the bottom part of the panel on your screen. There's an option to where you can raise your hand and you can verbally ask a question to our presenter today. This presentation is being recorded, and that simply means that we're able to save the video for later so that we can post it to our newsletter, and you are able to view it over and over. And you can also share it with your family and your friends, and just always go back to the recording. So if you do not have access to our newsletter and you would like to start to receive them, I can place our telephone number into the chat box, and you can just give us a call and we can get you signed up as soon as possible. So without further ado, I would love to introduce, I'm so excited, for Monica Moore. She is with Mary S. Eaton Center for Alzheimer's Disease Research at UCLA. And she will be talking about memory and aging, what you need to know. Hello, Monica.
Hello, Niambi. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who is here with us today. I'm going to share my screen here so that everyone can see the presentation as well. My name, again, Monica Moore. I do the community outreach and the community education for the Easton Center at UCLA. We are a comprehensive care center where we focus on memory evaluations, diagnosis, even baseline evaluations where people can find out, hey, is the memory loss that I'm experiencing, is this normal, or should I be concerned about it? We also have a strong clinical trials department that will helping with the research for Alzheimer's and other related dementias. We have a research. That's what our center is all about. It's research. It's the smart people in their labs trying to figure out this disease and trying to figure out how we can make a difference. So throughout this presentation, I am going to ask for your audience engagement. No one wants to just sit and listen to me talk for 45 minutes. So I want to hear from you as well. So if you can put interaction in the chat feature. So everybody who is on right now, if you could just sort of put a quick hi in the chat feature so I can make sure that everybody has access to it. And so if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we will be able to help you with it. So anyone who is listening, if you could just put a little hi, there we go. Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate that, Niambi. Thank you very much. So you can just put a quick hi in there so I can make sure that you are available and chatting with me. Thank you to, is it Cal PPG at Hotmail? Sue, Diane, great, wonderful. Thank you so much. Because one of the things about this world of Zoom is, we sit and we talk to a computer. Which is fine, but I miss the human interaction part. So this is a really great way that we'll be able to have you be engaged. Studies show that older adults learn better when they're engaged as opposed to just listening to someone speak. So that is one of the things that we're going to talk about today as well. So just to give you a little brief outline as to what I'm going to be speaking on, talking about how memory works. Our brains are so important and they're filled with so much information and they do so many things for us. And I think often people neglect that or they don't realize that. They think, oh, a brain is just for our memory. Something comes in and then we pull it out later. But really, there's so much more to that. So we're going to talk a bit about how our memory works. We're going to talk about normal memory changes that happen with age, give you some tips to try to maintain and improve your memory, things that we can always try to use and benefit from throughout our lives and throughout our life courses. And also talk about some causes of memory loss. And then at the very end, very quick, normal forgetting versus abnormal forgetting. So again, if you have questions throughout this, or if there's something that you want to make sure that I address, toss it in the chat feature now. I'll make sure that I get to it as well. So that, again, people come to these presentations for a reason. And so I want to make sure that your questions are answered during this time. So when we think about how memory works, we've got this, we have our brain in our head, and it does so much for us, as I mentioned. And it's this world of there's multiple steps involved in the memory process. So it's not just as simple as you read something and you retain it. You need to read it, and then you need to retain it. And then later you need to recall it, right? So these are the steps that are necessary. And I'll go through all of these, in the next few slides as well. So that first step, learning, this is that important step, but sometimes we learn and we don't even realize that we are learning. Our senses, we learn through our senses, learn through touch, learn through taste, learn through smell. Have you ever been in a situation where all of a sudden you smell something and it takes you back to a different time and place? It takes you back to a memory of somebody or somewhere that you haven't thought of in a long time. Yes, right. Years and years ago, I used to work at an assisted living, and we took the residents for an outing, and we were there sitting around, and all of a sudden I'm smelling, and one of the residents was wearing the same perfume my grandma used to wear. And I had to figure out which resident it was, which lady it was, because I had to make that connection. My grandmother had passed away in 1988. So this was something I hadn't thought of in years, but that smell connected me to my grandmother. And so you think about these things. I never purposefully smelled a perfume and tried to create a memory. It was just something that my brain did on its own. Also tasting, you eat something and it takes you back. Again, family recipes, there's a reason why these are traditions. It's not just that they taste good, it's that there are stories and that there's more about it than just the meal that you're eating. The next type of memory is your intentional memory. So this is what hopefully you're doing today. Hopefully you came here wanting to learn, wanting to retain some information about memory and aging, and also all the other wonderful presentations that are going to be presented this week through ONEgeneration and through this wonderful virtual symposium that they're offering this week. And then there's the world of incidental memory, right? This is everything else. This is the world of why we know celebrity gossip. This is why we know just those random things. Oh yeah, last week when I was at Ralph's had the milk on sale at this price. Did you really mean to do it? Or was that just something that came through because you glanced, you remembered, and then the next week you're like, oh, milk prices have gone up. So it's just some of this incidental memory that we typically don't focus on in terms of learning, but it is there anyway. So we talk about memory, the three different types, or how we learn, the three different types, intentional, incidental. Does anyone remember the other one? Anyone want to toss it in the chat? Three different types of memory there. Intentional, incidental. Nobody. See, this is the hard part about Zoom. Haha. Sensory, intentional, and incidental. So the next step is talk about retention. This is the time when we store this learned information. So obviously we have short-term memory, right? This is how you could hopefully remember my name, aside from the fact that it's probably on your Zoom screen. This is how you know where you just put your cup of water, where you put your keys. Somebody, that very short information, remembering something that was just seen or heard. And it does ultimately have a limited capacity. So if you're doing something and then someone comes and talks to you, you're going to get distracted, and that distraction is going to disrupt that short-term memory. So it's not that you are having a hard time focusing. It's just that there are distractions that interrupt that short-term memory. And as we age, it's harder to eliminate those distractions, and it's harder to refocus. That's what I think one of the big struggles, at least I've noticed to say in my life, is that as we all get older, we learn in different ways, and the amount of focus changes as well. So for your retention, you try to find the best possible environment, especially if you're trying to intentionally learn something. And then trying to minimize your distractions as well. So when we think about a limited capacity for short-term memory, say phone numbers, now it's a little bit harder now that we have to dial the area code as well as the phone number, but before just 7 digits. And that was something that people were able to easily remember. Now that it's 10, it's a little bit harder, but usually the area code is, the easy part because that's a familiar setting. So for the most part, it's going to be 818, and this is just what you remember, and then it's the additional information. But still, again, limited capacity on the short-term memory. So now we have a test. No pens. I can't see you. I'm going to trust all of you. I assume we wouldn't have any dishonest people part of this group today. So you're going to remember these words: bike, rain, lawyer, cigar, cat, and suitcase. So take a look at these words. Now go over them again. Bike, rain, lawyer, cigar, cat, and suitcase. Got it? Okay. Now we're going to talk about our long-term memory. Again, don't write those words down. We're going off of our memory here. This is a memory test. So think about our long-term memory. So long-term memory is interesting because it actually goes from anything that was remembered at least a minute ago to childhood, and for as long back as you can remember. So it's more than just that. People often think short-term memory is today or yesterday, but that's actually now being stored in your long-term. So long-term memory really is a vast amount of memories. It has no limits. You should be able to remember for years and years and years. But it really comes down to the fact of using memory strategies that will help retain this information and can strengthen the use of your long-term memory. So this is, again, chat feature. So everybody get your fingers ready, pull up your chat. Between these two types, long-term memory and short-term memory, which type of memory do you think people have more complaints about? Don't forget, put it in that chat feature because I have that open on my screen. And I don't think anyone is putting anything in the Q&A. So again, what type of memory do you think people have more of a question about, long-term or short-term? If you would, just type it in the chat or raise your hand. Anybody, come on, people, help me out here. All right, so okay, well, thank you, Gloria, thank you. If I saw you, I'd give you a great big high five right now for putting something in there. So thank you very much, Gloria. Okay, we have 2 people who say long-term. Those are more of their concerns about the memory, or that they think people have more concerns about memory. Anyone else? Oh, okay, Niambi's coming in with the other one, short-term. And it actually is, in fact, short-term memory, right? Because does it matter to you if you can't remember your 10th birthday? Does it remember to you? Does it bother you if you can't remember somebody's name from a few years ago? Most likely not, right? But what bothers people is, where did I put my keys? What's that appointment? Those little things that people forget, that's what bothers people. That's where we see people coming into our clinic to ask for the evaluation, is because of that short-term memory struggles. Long-term memory, some of it is well, that was so long ago, it doesn't matter. My great-grandfather lived to be just shy of 102. And my grandmother had Alzheimer's, which is why I'm in this field and why I do this work. And so this was her father. So in retrospect, we were looking back and my aunt was saying, I think Papa probably had Alzheimer's too. And we, jokingly, but lovingly said, Papa was 102. I'm sure he didn't even want to remember half of the stuff of his life, let alone really want to spend the time to be able to recall it. So it's not that it was Alzheimer's disease, it was just he was 102. And some of these long-term memories were definitely fading at that point. So while there isn't a limit in terms of what we could put into the long-term memory, and sometimes it takes a while to pull some of it back out. So the next step in the memory process is recall. So this is really where people have, the struggles, because you don't know that you haven't retained it unless you go to recall it. Because that's the part when you recall information, you're like, oh, what's her name? So I met her at ONEgeneration. We were both there. It was the senior luncheon. Oh shoot, I can't remember her name. And that's where the frustrations kick in. That's where people are upset and don't forgive themselves for not being able to remember that information. So recall is also known as retrieval. Again, think of your brain as like a filing cabinet. Sometimes you got to look through those files to find the exact piece of paper where you're actually pulling it out. Oh yeah, that's her name. Okay, her name was Jenna. Now I remember. Okay. It also hinges on two different factors. One is the emotional significance. Like, does that information matter to you? Is it something that you've been studying and you've been really trying to focus on? So does it have any sort of meaning to you, or is it just sort of peripheral information, which again, our minds are filled with tons of that. We don't really need that. So how can we really pull, where is that connection and where is that area of making sure that this information matters? So then it creates a bigger bond to the information, and then you will have a greater chance of recalling it later. The other factor is if you can connect it to anything that you already know. So if you have a daughter named Monica, you're going to do a much better job of remembering my name than if you don't, just because you can relate it to that. When I went off to college, we're all meeting people and trying to find, get to know each other. And I always said, my name is Monica from Santa Monica, who went to St. Monica's. That's true. That is my name. I grew up in Santa Monica. My high school was St. Monica's High School. And so it was a way to be able to connect it. And once I gave people those steps, there's a much better chance that they would remember my name the next time that we saw each other. So does anyone remember those words? All right, so I need you to type these into the chat feature. I'm not going to show the words until I see some people typing some things in the chat feature here so that we can, again, have that engagement. See if anyone remembers those words that I just put up. Even if you remember just a few of them. Anybody? Excellent, excellent, excellent. Great, okay. Thank you for using the chat feature. Oh, I always appreciate this. Thank you. Bike, rain, lawyer, cigar, cat, and suitcase. Yes. So we have, okay, great. Cat, rain, bike, cigar. So our words, bike, rain, lawyer, cigar, cat, and suitcase. Now, does anyone want to tell me how they were able to remember those? Did anyone come up with associations? Okay. Anything else? Okay, repeating them over, great. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes it's that word of the world of just repetition. Did anyone, oh great, thank you, Gloria. That is exactly what I was looking for. I was gonna ask if anyone put them into the words of a story where you picture maybe, I always like this version. There's the other version, but once I say it, you'll know what I mean. Where you could, there's a cat riding its bike in the rain, smoking a cigar with a lawyer in the suitcase. There's the other version where it could be the cat is in the suitcase, but I always like the lawyer in the suitcase version. No offense to any lawyers or if any of your family members are lawyers. So yeah, coming up with some sort of story, often the crazier story, the better. So if maybe you want to think about, the suitcase now has legs, or the bike is juggling a cat and the lawyer and a cigar. Anything like a little bit crazy where you're able to make these words association. So when we think about as we age, what's normal and what is not, this is the big thing that we get a lot. I get, obviously in the work that I do, working at the Easton Center, talking about memory, talking about memory changes, Alzheimer's disease. I've worked in this field for 20 years, always Alzheimer's and dementia focused. And, this is a real concern for many, many reasons. One is because of the, it's pretty scary as we age, forgetting things. The fact it's not talked about all that much. And also three, just sort of the uncertainty about it, because there isn't really much that can be done in terms of medications. So we'll talk about some of those a little bit later. So this world of normal age-related memory changes, that happens to everybody. And when I'm saying age-related, I'm not just talking about 70. People who are in their 30s, their brains change. I don't know how many of you may know teenagers, but think about a teenager in your life, or, when you were surrounded by teenagers. They can multitask, music on, studying, texting with friends. They could do all of these things at the same time. There's no way I can read with music on. I just can't, because I realize that my brain starts going off to the music, and then I have stopped reading what I was reading. So when we think about aging, we realize that forgetfulness is not, or significant forgetfulness is not a normal part of aging. Like forgetfulness, it starts to interfere with your daily life. That is not normal. Yes, we all forget things, but the key is that you remember them later. So our intelligence does remain stable all throughout our lives. And our memory really doesn't significantly change with the normal aging process. But what does change is it's harder to think. We slow down. If you think about it, your body slows down. So why is it not accepted that your brain might slow down? I guarantee, I'm pretty sure probably nobody here would want to race my 12-year-old boy. Most likely, because you just assume, well, he's 12, he's got youth on his side, and he'll win. Well, why is that okay? Why do we accept that, but we don't accept memory changes that are associated with age and the slowing down of our brains? Our legs, our hips, our bodies all slow down. Our brain is just another part of our body. Also, as I've mentioned a few times already, difficulty paying attention. If you have some sort of distraction that's going to come into the room right now, I could give you the winning lottery numbers, and you may not get them all, because there is that distraction, and it's harder to come back around after that distraction. As we age, we need more memory cues. Okay, so you see me somewhere and you're like, gosh, she looks familiar. Gosh, where did I see her? And now it's hard because you saw me in your living room. So that's not normal. So we're trying to figure out, where exactly am I? How do we make this connection? And you realize, okay, through the ONEgeneration Senior Symposium, through this presentation, okay, and you start putting these pieces together to be able to complete the full memory. Also, as we age, we don't use these memorization techniques. Kids use them when they're younger, right? I before E, except after C. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? These are rhymes and memorization techniques that we were taught when we were younger. So these things change, and we don't use those as much as we get older. And also our senses decline. So if you are in a crowded restaurant and you have challenges with your hearing, you may not hear what people are talking about. So it's not a matter of not remembering it. It never was taken in the first place. So if you don't hear it, you're obviously never going to remember it. So it's the change of the sensory declines also as we age. So we're going to talk a little bit about some tips now. Okay, this is always the part that people want. The tips to maintain and improve your memory. And again, I'm going to use the chat feature here. So if you can pull it up, get your fingers ready. And I'm going to ask some of you, what do you do for each one of these bullet points to help maintain your memory and to maintain your body physically? Because what's good for the heart is good for the brain. And for many years, doctors really visited you from, they did a checkup from, like neck down. No one ever asked how you were doing mentally, how you were doing memory-wise, mood. It was always just like, how's your heart? Where's your pulse, blood pressure? And so, but now we're really seeing that it is a full body connection here. So tip number one, exercise your mind. All of you who came here today, great, good step in the right direction. You're a step ahead of everyone else who didn't come today. So finding these ways to exercise your mind. What do you do specifically to help exercise your mind? Ooh, very good. Unwind at the beach. That is so good because that definitely hits number 4 here as well. Decrease stress, right? It's good for your body and for your mind. That's a wonderful one. Anyone else? What do you do to exercise your mind? Crossword puzzles, great. Bingo, wonderful, great. Hopefully some of you read, right? You read. Oh, Jeopardy, excellent, Diane, fabulous. Yeah, Jeopardy, finding these ways to engage. Any of you in book clubs? How about just like online chats, or now, depending on how people feel, seeing and talking to other people, friends again, that's also good for your mind. Lots of people will say, oh, I do crossword puzzles and I do my word searches, but they don't engage with other people. It's like, well, that's a very crucial piece as well. So, you could do all the crossword puzzles you want, but you have to expand the way that you exercise your mind, and that socialization, which again, in this past year, that is an area that so many people, especially people over the age of 65, have really suffered from and have not been able to really take care of their mind in the way that they want because of the fact that we've been socially isolated for, this past year and change. So this is an important piece to find ways to do this. If you are so adventurous, learning a new language, picking up an instrument, finding a craft, those are all good ways to exercise your mind as well. What about exercising your body? What are some things that people do either currently, or maybe if we think about pre-pandemic, or that you're starting to do again? Zumba, wonderful. Is the Zumba, okay, walking, is the Zumba online or is it in person? Or was it in person? Or reading the Bible, wonderful. Spending time with friends, great. Online, great. Yeah, so you're able to find, so online Zumba, thank you. So these different ways to engage your body, walking around the block. Yes, I have to say that is the one thing that really helped me in this past year, was going for a walk, right? You don't, even pre-COVID, I'd always tell people, we don't need to make your annual gym donation. It's not necessarily a membership if you don't use it. So it's like you write your check to 24 Hour Fitness, you give it to them as their donation, and then you call it good. But finding these ways that you can actually stick with, because exercise, again, yeah, walks are so good. It's good for your mind. It's good just to get the air and to get the blood flow going. And it also helps with strength. It helps with resistance, helps with all of these factors that you need as well as you age. Next one, watch what you eat and what you drink. So we need to really live a heart healthy diet. This is what the goal is. So minimizing meats, especially minimizing processed foods, looking at the world of trying to eat the rainbow. If you think about a plate, the plate should be colorful. It should be beautiful. I know ONEgeneration that you have or is it the Encino Farmers Market that's there? That's a wonderful place. You go and you get color in your food that can really be able to help your body, especially this time of year, finding berries that are high in antioxidants. That is really important as well for your brain. Also looking at fish that is high in omega-3 fatty acids. Again, that's good for your brain. Anything with the omega-3. So we're looking walnuts, nuts, walnuts, nuts. Where am I? Where olive oil, right? Olive oil is so good for you. Also looking at the world of avocados. These heart healthy fats is what you want. When you also think about what we drink, trying to stay away from sugary drinks, trying to stay with water, trying to find things that are actually going to nourish and hydrate you. And then also looking at, in terms of alcohol consumption, limiting it, finding it's, the basic regulations, like an 8-ounce glass for a male or 2. I'm always bad at this. A glass, right? A glass of wine, ideally red wine. Red wine is good for your heart. If you don't drink red wine, don't start unless you want an excuse. And then you can say that Monica told you. And also people say, well, what about fish? I don't like fish, or I'm allergic to fish. Well, then don't eat fish. None of these things, don't force yourself, because that's the other component, is you need to do things that are pleasurable and that you actually can enjoy. And Naomi had a question about face masks possibly creating a slight brain fog due to the lack of fresh air. Not necessarily, because in reality, the amount of time that people are wearing their face masks is ultimately limited, unless you are in a work environment where you have to keep it on all day. But do you think about like our doctors and nurses, they've been wearing face masks for years pre-COVID. And so there hasn't been any research done to see if there has been a brain fog association between face masks and the lack of fresh air association there. So there's nothing that I have heard about. And again, I think this world of face masks too, people think about them as new, but again, doctors and nurses have been wearing them for years, and they've been fine. So it's something that's just different for the rest of our community. Fu Young mentioned singing a song and listening to music. Yes, those are great ways to exercise your mind. Music has a wonderful way of really grabbing people. There's this wonderful documentary, which of course I have forgotten the name of it right now, that talks all about music and memory. That's the name of the documentary, about music and people with dementia and how they put on headphones, and these people who are very progressed in their dementia, and they put on the headphones and it's like this life comes back. They put on music that they grew up with. Woman in it she's there in her wheelchair, and they put on old Bible songs, and she just comes to life in a way that you would not have thought was possible when you look at her. So yeah, this connection of music is so good for the brain. The next thing here on this slide is talking about decreasing stress. We all have a lot of it in our lives, going for walks, doing these exercise things that people have talked about. Is really good. Going to the beach, as was mentioned. Does anyone have any other tools that you use to either decrease stress, or also looking at the next one about making time for relaxing and enjoyable activities? Meditation, yoga, Tai Chi. Yes, if those work for you, wonderful. I actually always say I'm a bad yoga person. I have a friend who teaches yoga, and she always tries to get me to come to her classes, but I almost can't slow down that much. So which is why walking is my form of relaxation. I'm able to get the heart rate going, and I feel so much better then. But it's my relaxation. Taking a warm bath, yes, great ways, especially maybe get some oils in there, get some aromatherapy essential oils to be able to really help with that warm bath, to make it a truly relaxing activity. That is something that's really good for you as well. I want to pop back up to the first tab here. And I know somebody wrote down in the list here about, in terms of exercising in your mind, the world of crossword puzzles. Okay. Very common. Everyone puts down crossword puzzles. But the one thing, so if we think about long-term versus short-term memory, crossword puzzles rely upon your long-term memory. But short-term memory is the memory that people have more complaints about. So while long crossword puzzles are great, they're wonderful for your brain, again, stimulation, they're not going to help your short-term memory. If you're looking for short-term memory exercises, you think about an actual word search, where you need to find the word maintain in this group. And so that's where you find that's a short-term memory exercise. So that is something that's good for that part of the brain, or for that type of memory. So more tips to maintain and improve your memory. The first one is to create a system. If you lose your keys, most likely it's just because you didn't put them in a place where they belong, right? I have a hook at my house and I put my key there. And if my key's not there, I'm going to not know where my keys are, because that is where I put them. The other day, I had some money, I had some cash. Amazing. And my husband gave me some cash and I put it in my pocket. But at the same time, my son was talking to me. And then at the same time, my husband was asking something else from me. Later in the day, I was like, hey, could you give me that money? And he's like, I gave it to you. I said, no, I gave it back to you. I didn't remember that I had it. And I did not remember that he gave it to me. So sort of do the, oops, like, okay, so where is this? What can I, trying to retrace. And it took a long time. Finally, I was nowhere near him. I was nowhere in the vicinity of thinking about the money. And I was like, oh, my sweatshirt pocket. I was wearing my sweatshirt at that time. I took it off and I must have left the money in there. I sent him a text because I was out of the house and he was doing laundry at the time. And he said, yep, just found that soggy dollar bill. So the money had made it through the laundry, but it had been found. So it was because I was too distracted at that time and I didn't have an exact system. I did have him give me the money, put it in my wallet, call it good. The next thing is, and then, sorry, I have all these great examples that I always try to bring in. Another thing that's good about creating a system. So this is a true story from a woman who I gave this presentation 2 years ago. She said that one of the things that she was always worried about when she left the house was if she had locked the door. She just almost had this panic moment of like, oh my gosh, did I lock the door? Should I go back? And really was concerned about this. So she created a system where she took a rubber band and she put the rubber band around the doorknob. And when she left and locked the door, she would take the rubber band from the door and put it on her wrist. So when she was out and about, and if she had that moment of, did I lock the door? She could look at her wrist and see if the rubber band was there. It reminded her that she had locked the door and was able to put her at ease. So we think about these types of systems as well that you can create. Post-it notes. Does anyone here have any suggestions on any of these ideas on this page about creating a system, using memory strategies, or things that you personally do to try to help with your memory? I know again, we all have our phones these days, right? We put a lot of information in those. I have reminders that pop up that will say, hey, Monica, time to do this. And it reminds me to be able to do it. So if you have any memory strategies, please put them in the chat, or any systems that you use, put them in the chat so we could talk about those and also just share with each other. I think that's one thing that we lose in this virtual world, is that ability to share. Because I think these suggestions that may work for Diane, Gloria may never have thought of. And so you mentioned, it's like, oh, that's a great idea. Thank you. So finding these ways to interact and engage. So next one is to partner with your doctor. So if you are concerned about your memory, go to your doctor. Don't push it off. People are afraid to go to the doctor because they're afraid the doctor is going to say that something's wrong. Well, guess what? Maybe something is wrong. And it's not the doctor who's, the one surprising this on you. You know something's wrong. We just don't like to hear the bad news. But also, in terms of partnering with your doctor regarding memory loss, there could be something other than Alzheimer's or dementia causing that memory loss that could actually be improved. Could be a vitamin deficiency. It could be medication interaction. Wouldn't you much rather have that be the case and be able to take care of it than pushing it off? So finding these ways to partner with your doctor and work with your doctor. And also maintain a positive attitude. Optimists live longer than pessimists. So able to find a way to maintain a positive attitude to be able to make it through some of these struggles that we may have in life regarding our memory. So Gloria put in the chat a great suggestion of hanging things on when you need, hang things probably by the door when you need them to go out. I do that. If I'm loading up the car, I'll just start stuffing things right by the front door. So I have to practically trip over them to be able to get out. And finding that Annie says a small box near the front door for garage opener and keys and things like that, where it's one spot. And so you know where it's going to be. Great ideas, great suggestions. And if anyone has any others, please, again, put them in the chat. So, okay, back to the words. I see that Annie put them in just a minute ago. She must have predicted my slides. So does anyone else remember those words one more time? All right, we have bike, rain, lawyer, cigar, cat, and suitcase. So don't worry, I'm not going to come back next week and ask you these words again. It's just that practice and just that exercise. So in our last few minutes, I like to talk about just some causes of memory loss. I alluded to this just a minute ago, but talking about how there are some causes of memory loss that are treatable. My husband's grandmother was experiencing very severe memory loss, lots of disorientation and confusion. They brought her to the doctors, and ultimately they reevaluated her medication and took her off some and added new ones and adjusted everything. And they were able to fix and improve her memory. So it was just a medication interaction in her case. It wasn't anything greater. So realizing that it can be something that there's a solution to. Some causes of memory loss are serious and they're irreversible, but it's good to get to them early. Everything we're seeing right now with Alzheimer's research, prevention, intervention, it's all early. So at the first sign of seeing confusion or memory loss, talk to your doctor and talk to your family about it as well. So some reversible causes of memory loss, anxiety, fatigue, right? I know we felt a lot of this in the past year. Again, if I was doing this presentation last June, I think we all would be pretty high on this top level of the anxiety, the fatigue. There's my laser pointer. The anxiety, the fatigue, the stress, right? It was really high last year at this time. And it's still pretty high for lots of people. So these can affect our memories. Disuse. There's a lot to be said about the use it or lose it world. Physical impairment and illness and alcohol as well. So talking, making sure that you get help for these and to be able to have these questions or concerns be addressed. Oops. Other reversible causes of memory loss, high blood pressure. Again, as I've mentioned, medications, malnutrition, low blood sugar, dysfunctional thyroid, and depression. And this past year, we have seen an increased number of people who have come into our clinic, virtual visits, because of depression, isolation, and how that has really affected their memory. So being aware of this, talking to others, and getting that help that you need. When we actually talk about irreversible causes of memory loss, so this is memory loss that is noticeable and that most likely will not go away. There are things that you could do to maybe slow down the progression. The first one is what we call mild cognitive impairment. So this is where somebody is there is cognitive changes that are noticeable to their self and to their family members, but other people outside of that small circle may not notice them as much. It doesn't really interfere with daily life. People are still able to work, able to drive, able to live independently. But there's just enough of what people may call a brain fog, confusion, problems with language that would fall into this category of mild cognitive impairment. There is a percentage of this population that does go on to Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. But there's also a percentage that stays right at mild cognitive impairment. And this is just where people are. This becomes their new normal. The word dementia, this is a big question that we talk about, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Well, we think about dementia is a word that classifies a group of symptoms characterized by problems with thinking, language, memory, reasoning. Somebody could have a medication interaction and could be experiencing dementia type symptoms, or someone can have Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia. So you think about an umbrella, and Alzheimer's is that most common form of dementia. I also often use the analogy of dementia is pain. So you have pain, let's say you have pain in your wrist. The next question is, well, what kind of pain and what is causing the pain? So is it arthritis? Is it a broken wrist? Is it a sprained wrist? What's wrong? Is it a muscle thing? Is it a bone? So realizing that dementia is more of the symptom and Alzheimer's disease could be one of the reasons why the symptom is occurring. So hopefully that makes sense. I always like to try to really break that down for people. Let's see, I know we're coming up on, here's my umbrella. So just, I know it's 2:46 and I know we wanted to finish this part of the presentation in time for questions and answers. So if you have those, please put them in the chat and I will get to them. So if we think about the word of dementia, again, this umbrella and these lots of different types of dementias underneath. Alzheimer's, again, being the most common form, frontal temporal dementia, being actually the second most common form for people under the age of 65. Dementia with Lewy body is the second most common form for people over the age of 65. So while these are types of dementia that we don't really hear about often, they're still quite, they're not rare dementias. So as I mentioned, Alzheimer's disease is the most common form for adults over the age of 65. It is irreversible, it is progressive, and it is degenerative. Here in the United States, it's the 6th leading cause of death and 5th here in California, also knowing that we have a larger older adult population as well. And it is the only cause of death in the top 10 that in America that cannot be cured, prevented, or slowed down. You know, we think things like breast cancer, stroke, heart attacks, all of these have been able to be slowed down, or we can cure those. But with Alzheimer's disease, we're not at that point. I'm going to actually pop into the question that was posed in the chat, talking about the new medication that was just FDA approved for Alzheimer's disease. The medication name is Aduhelm. I can actually say the other name, aducanumab, a little bit easier than the other name. So this is a brand new medication. It's the first FDA approved Alzheimer's disease medication since 2007, I believe. Or 2003. So it's been a long time since we've had an FDA approved medication. This medication, though, is only for people in the very, very early stages of Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment. It's not for people later in the later stages. It is an infusion medication. So it actually, people would have to come into an infusion center to be able to receive it once a month. And in the studies that we have seen, it does reduce the amyloid plaque, which is a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. But it's very questionable in terms of if it actually slows down the disease itself. So while it has been FDA approved, I actually have a meeting later this week with researchers and doctors at UCLA to sort of talk about what our strategy is going to be about it. Because there's lots of different facets to it. It's not as simple, here's a new medication, take this pill and we'll see you in 6 months. So there's a lot of different elements to the approval of this. The way that I heard it talked about by a well-known Alzheimer's researcher was that the approval of this was very good for science because it's going to open the doors in terms of the scientific aspect of Alzheimer's disease. Not so, but the world about how good it is for patients is still out there. So keep your ears out. I believe there's going to be a lot more about this right now. It's a very controversial drug in terms of the approval process of it, because a few years ago it failed, the trial failed. So we're trying to see now, what do we do as a medical center, as a research center, to be able to support this and to be able to help our families, because that's what we care about. We want to make sure that we're truly helping the families and giving them the information and the support that they need. So here we go, let me slow this down. Okay, so really quickly, some basic risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Age is going to be your greatest risk factor. Genetics, but when you think about it, the world of genetics, that's what makes us up. You get genes from mom, you get genes from dad, and trying to see, well, what are those and how are those going to affect your body, and how are those going to affect your progression or your diagnosis of any disease, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, diabetes, etc. I'm actually not going to get into the APOE gene unless anyone has any questions about it, because I realize I'm past my time and I want to open it up for actual questions and answers. But here's my last little sheet for you. Normal forgetting versus abnormal forgetting. And yes, this is a little bit dramatic in terms of the separation of them, but I feel it's important to put it out here. Like normal forgetting, right? We all have forgotten where we put our keys, right? If you haven't, you're a magical person and I need to talk to you. Okay, I need to figure this out. Abnormal memory loss, and I apologize if these are not lined up properly, it's not on my side, is forgetting what your keys are for. Realizing that you have keys in your hands and you're not sure, are these car keys? Are these door keys? Or are they, what do you even do with these? Having that loss and that problem with it. Forgetting where you put your checkbook, if anyone still has checkbooks, versus forgetting which bank your money is in. Let's say if you recently changed banks and then completely forgetting that you even did that. Being disoriented for a moment in a strange room or even in your own room. Sometimes these things happen. You're like, hold on, where am I? If you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, hold on, where am I? What's going on? But being disoriented for a moment in a strange room is common. But being disoriented in your own home where you're not able to figure out where you are, that's going to be much more of a question and a concern and something to sort of highlight. And then finally, forgetting where you parked your car in a parking lot, right? If you go to a mall, my gosh, it's so easy to do that. But forgetting that you drove in the first place, that's going to be much more of the concern. So does anyone have any questions at this point? So this is my information. This is our website, our phone number. We're still not back in office completely. So you can call and leave me a message, or this is the number for our clinical trials department as well. So if you have any questions for that regarding our clinical trials or the work that we do there, please feel free to reach out. And then that is our website. So does anyone have any questions? And I definitely want to thank ONEgeneration for this opportunity. I always enjoy the in-person, it's not quite a festival, senior fair, or the fair that it is. It's always such a nice place. It's always hot though on that day. This is nice to be able to be here with people and to be able to present this, even though it's virtually. I think we're all doing a really good job of still being able to provide services, even though in this virtual world. And I thank all of you as participants for also hopping on this virtual world with us. Like the professionals have had to adjust, and I know all of you have had to adjust too. So I appreciate that on your end. Gloria wrote regarding problems with words, faces, and names. That's probably the most common, honestly. People are always so, we put lots of pressure on ourselves, again, in terms of that area. We have a family friend who really, truly cannot recognize people's faces. It's sort of the way his brain works. And so he has struggles with that. So some of these things, the key to really remember is this your normal? Have you always been like this? Or is this something that is new? Because if it's new, then talk to your doctor. If it's normal, if you've always been bad with names, or if you've always been bad with faces, then, well, that's just you. Again, we have to appreciate and understand ourselves. Like, I am terrible with numbers. I cannot remember numbers to save my life. So I'm not going to say as I get older, gosh, I'm bad at numbers. There must be something wrong with me, because I'm just bad. I've never been good at that. I'm a faces person. I'm a names person. So realizing if this is something new for you, or if this is just sort of who you are. And then if it is something that's new, talk to your doctor about it. Someone asked about diagnostic tests that show the amount of tangles and plaques in your brains. Yes, so we have right now the things that are used the most often to identify levels of amyloid plaque, which that is the plaques in our brains that we all have a certain amount of naturally, but people with Alzheimer's disease have a greater number. And we think it's that they can't really clear it out in the same way that our brains are able to. So there is there's a PET scan, a PET scan. Those are used a lot in clinical trials. Again, this new medication, the aducanumab, would require a PET scan or some sort of test to check the levels of amyloid in your brain, but they're expensive. Insurance doesn't always cover them, so that's a struggle. There are lumbar punctures or spinal taps that can assess the level of amyloid in your cerebral spinal fluid, which then would allow us to know, the amount of amyloid plaques in your brain. And then there is new, it's still not FDA approved. It has been, there's this difference between it is approved, but not necessarily FDA approved, a blood test. This is going to be our next thing that will soon, it's not quite yet available for everybody, but it will be coming out pretty soon. It's been approved. And again, it's not covered by Medicare or insurance yet, but a blood test to be able to test these levels of amyloid, because we see that the amyloid builds up way before any clinical symptoms begin. So people are almost at their maximum level of amyloid before they notice any cognitive changes. So by getting these as early as possible, we're really going to be able to help people and reduce the numbers of people with Alzheimer's disease. And great questions. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, if you have any, actually, I will toss my email address on the chat here. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. There you go. And I would be happy to be able to answer any questions. If you need any help or need some additional resources regarding Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, please reach out to me. We have support groups. I know ONEgeneration has support groups, and those are really something that could be incredibly beneficial to you. So if you don't have any questions, I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to say thank you so much to all of you for being here.
Thank you so much, Monica. You are so awesome. And just thank you everyone for participating and just being active in this presentation. And we would love for you guys to continue to come see us via Zoom, of course. Throughout this entire week, we have speakers each day. So tomorrow we have some more amazing presenters. We'll have LADWP, we'll have FBI Los Angeles, we'll have law offices of Sarah Polinsky, Scan Health, and Be Present Care. So trust me, you guys do not want to miss these presentations. They are so amazing. So we will be starting first thing in the morning at 9 a.m. And if you have any questions or just want a little bit more information of what time people are coming on to speak, you can give our office a call, and I can put it in the chat. And we can definitely let you know. We can send you an email, let you know when the presenters are going to be presenting. But again, thank you so much, Monica. You are the best. Thank you for everything that you do for ONEgeneration. And we will see everyone soon. We'll see you in the morning.
Great. Bye, everybody. Thank you so very much. Appreciate you being here.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.